Hello, everyone. Salim Omar here from the CPA Marketing Genius podcast. Welcome to another episode of this podcast. I've got a special guest for us. Her name is Rebecca Smith. I'm super excited about what we're going to be covering in the next little while. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you, Salim. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Good. Great to have you, Rebecca. Let's start with your backstory. Generally, I will read someone's bio, and I feel that it's best if you share your backstory because it's quite varied. It's very colorful, and you've done different things, and you're a real asset when it comes to the topic of selling a practice. So tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you. My name's Rebecca Smith. I am based out of Florida. I'm originally from Costa Rica, moved to the US when I was 10, and attended the University of Florida, got my degree in psychology, and ended up staying in Gainesville, Florida, which is where I'm based out of. Um, my professional trajectory has been, I think that's where the colorful part is. I owned, after graduating, I started a business um, out of a business incubator and grew it and eventually was able to sell it. And within that business, I created a couple separate sister companies that were did some cool things, like we sold product to the home shopping network and had a collegiate license company. So I really just enjoyed entrepreneurs. I enjoyed creating opportunities, and came across the profession of a business broker. And right around the same time that I was thinking about exiting my own business. So it was kind of meant to be. And I started practicing as a business broker 6 or 7 years ago. I started. And again, it sort of coincided with me also selling my business at that time. So the knowledge I was getting was extremely helpful. Um, but yeah, basically, I'm a business broker. I help other types of businesses, but definitely CPA firms and practices both exit. I help the owners exit their business, strategize on how to do that best, and then I also help other practice owners grow through acquisition. So I help them find firms to buy as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. And when you talk about selling a practice, I mean, it's such a big decision and it's such a big undertaking because for most accountants, we've owned a practice, myself included. I've owned my practice for 27 years. It becomes your baby. And I know the listener who is considering selling their practice, this has become their baby. So, what are some important points to consider, Rebecca, when selling a practice?
Well, I think we can start off by saying that it's completely normal um, to have that feeling of apprehension, right? Because to your point, Salim, it is your baby, and you've worked really hard, blood, sweat, and tears, quite literally, for a lot of people, right? And so uh, it is really scary sometimes to even consider selling, but it's necessary for some people. So firm owners sell their business for many different reasons. Like many different reasons. Their spouse relocated. They're ready for a new career. Whatever the reason may be, but there's three top reasons um, why firm owners decide to sell, and those reasons are usually retirement. That's the number one reason. And so it's just someone who has put in their years and their tenure and they're ready for retirement. And so they're selling a really solid practice that's been developed over decades, like yours, Celine. And then there is sometimes due to divorce and sometimes due to illness. And so those are the reasons why most people end up selling, although there are, like I said, many different reasons. It's a very difficult decision to make. And so some of the things that are happening with owners that are in that process of trying to make that decision is there's a lot of FOMO, fear of missing out. And so you think about the revenue that you currently have and how much earnings you have, and a lot of owners think in terms of like, well, if I stayed, 5 more years and I'm making $200,000 a year, that'll put me through for the next 5 years. Why would I sell it? So there's a lot of questions around that. There's like this fear of missing out on potential revenue. And then there's also the concern of what you're going to do after. So if you're not retiring, if you're retiring, we know what you're going to do after, right? After you exit. But if you're not retiring, what is your next career step look like? So it's just a hard decision, in general. And
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of considerations, but those are some of the main concerns that I've seen are going on with firm owners as they're trying to make that choice.
Yeah. Are there any quick rules of thumb when it comes to timing when to sell a practice?
Yes. So the best time to sell a practice is when you're on top, right? And so when your business is trending upward, which for a lot of firm owners and business owners, that's a hard thing to think about, because if your business is doing great, why would you sell it? Well, that's when your business is the most saleable, right? And so
Hmm.
it's when your business looks the best, um, both in operations and on paper, that a buyer would be most interested in purchasing it, and that's when you're going to be able to get the most money for your business. And so it's really important to remember that, like, if your business isn't doing as well, the valuation of your business is usually related either to owner benefit or owner's discretionary earnings, or sometimes it's a percent of revenue. So that bottom line number, or that revenue number, is extremely important. So the bigger that number is, the bigger the price tag can be on your business. So that's something to consider. And then there's other factors that you can take advantage of, like there's political, economical, and industry changes that you should consider. So a couple examples are when the pandemic hit, and uh, there was this idea of essential services or essential workers, and so they were able to continue operations. And so in that moment, businesses that were considered essential became coveted businesses, and so buyers were really interested in those businesses because they were thriving. So that's sort of
Hmm.
a change in, it wasn't really like for a specific industry, it was for many industries, but if you were considered essential, you were at an advantage for selling your business. And then another example is politically. So I live in the state of Florida. There's many different opinions about politics, as you know, and we're having an influx of individuals that are moving to Florida because they really like how our governor specifically is manage the pandemic and other issues within our state. And so we are experiencing huge growth in the state of Florida, and we're seeing it in business sales as well. And so because there's huge growth and people want to come, we're able to sell more businesses at top dollar. So those are a couple examples of when to sell. So you want to take advantage of momentum that is occurring either in your industry or in your space or in your country. Or you also want to take advantage of your business trending upward. You just want to maximize how much you can sell your business for, and that has a lot to do with your revenue, how your business is performing, and outside factors of how your business is perceived by the world in that moment.
Hmm. Very good. I know an important question that a seller may be considering or thinking about is, hey, do I have a sellable business? Or even more so along the lines of how do I structure my business? Or what's the best way to optimize the multiple or the valuation of the practice?
Mhm. Yes, that's a great question. Um, so first of all, I think it's important to say I've sold businesses before that were not profitable. So there's a buyer out there, I think, for everything. So in this podcast, we're talking about best case scenario. But I have
Mm,
seen instances where weird things
mm,
happen and a buyer is just enamored with a business concept and they'll buy it despite the fact it's not making money.
It
So
works for them. So it's an
exactly,
accountant that owns an accounting practice and they buy it, and this brings in an additional pool of revenues for them, even though
exactly.
it's not profitable in its current setting. In the
Mhm.
new setting, it can be made profitable. So I understand what you're saying there. Got it. So it can be not profitable, but yet there's a buyer for it.
Yeah, because that buyer is going to take advantage of some aspect of the existing business that they need, right? So they know
Yeah, yeah,
something that we don't know. Um,
correct.
but I think in general, across the board, best case scenario is that you have a turnkey practice. So you don't want a practice that's owner dependent completely on you, because then it becomes really scary for the buyer to think about the future. So when you, as the owner of the firm, leaves, what happens to all the clients? If all those clients are there because of you, if you're the one keeping those relationships and doing the work, what happens when you leave? So a buyer is thinking that way, right? So you want a turnkey practice. You want a practice that has a team that's properly set up, that has responsibilities um, allocated amongst the team members. You want a practice that has a solid operational plan. It has systems and processes for how you operate. You want to make sure that your practice has a good reputation. So making sure that all of your online directory reviews are positive, addressing any that are not positive, and encouraging your happy customers to give you good reviews, because that's usually the first perception that a buyer has. Once they know your firm name, they're going to go search you online, and they're going to see your digital reputation online when they make that search. So that's something
Mm,
that's really important. Um, and you want to have a practice that has multiple revenue streams, hopefully. So if you're doing tax preparation, are you doing both business and personal? If you're offering accounting services, if you're offering business advisory, consultation, and then if you're also doing special projects like forecasting and formations and dissolution. So
yeah.
um,
The
have
more I mean, the diversification is great, and the important aspect is the recurring nature of these revenue streams.
that
1040s, lesser so, businesses, especially if they're established businesses, more so a higher valuation when you've got those in the revenue mix.
Yeah. So retained revenue is really important. So how long going along with reputation, how long have you had your customers? Um, and how many customers do you lose? So a lot of those things are questions that you may be asked by a potential buyer because they want to know. Like you may have really good operations, but maybe your customer service isn't very good. And so after using you for 1 year, customers don't come back, right? And so we don't a buyer's going to be discouraged by that. So you want to show tenure in your clients, you want to show consistency, um, consistent streams of recurring revenue are are key.
Makes sense. Um, that's awesome. And I'm looking at the clock as well, and we're running. We're getting close to finishing time, but this is so good. I've got a couple more questions, Rebecca, that I want to make sure we get in. Um, what are some ways to stay involved once the seller sells the business?
Mhm.
How can they stay involved in the firm that they sold?
Well, so first of all, there's always a training and transition period with any buyer, and that is something that can be negotiated. Um, So we would create a when the buyer puts in an offer, they may counter what you originally offered as a training and transition period. So let's just say that you had said that you would stay on for a month to train on the new buyer. Um, they that would be an extra month that you would be involved in the business after you sell the business. Usually it's a part of the deal. So usually you're not getting paid for that extra month. It's expected as part of the deal. However, in
Mhm.
some cases, the buyer may feel more comfortable bringing you on as a consultant or as a part-time worker for a period of time. So the cool thing about firm sales transactions is that you can negotiate. Everything's negotiable. Everything's negotiable. So the buyer has things that they want. The seller has things that they want. Usually, you can find a way to meet in the middle so that everybody gets a little bit of what they want. So in terms of how can you stay involved with your firm? Well, you're going to stay involved for the training period, and that is the time period of that is negotiable. So know that. And then there may be an opportunity for you to serve as a consultant long term for that business. One thing that I do share is you have to think about whether you want to be involved with that buyer for a long period of time. So I always just plant that seed and say, you have to, that's a consideration. Do you want to, that won't be your business anymore. You won't be calling the shots. So it's a different relationship. Are you okay with signing up for that? So those are ways that you can stay involved with your firm. Another way that I've seen it happen is if you have, if you're offering a specific service within a CPA firm that the new owner doesn't have expertise in, and you can continue taking on that book of business and have some sort of share revenue agreement with them. That would be another way that I've seen it work out, where you can stay involved with the firm that you just sold.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the interesting thing, the observation as I'm listening to you here is that, or the reminder even, is that there, in every firm, there's a different way that firms sell. There's a different set of things that are negotiated. A buyer is unique, a seller is unique with different needs.
Mhm.
And I think making it work is where the intermediary, a facilitator, someone like yourself comes in, who understands both sides, um, and so that they can find the right connections, the right alignment, and really negotiate on what matters. Right,
Mhm.
getting all that in a way that is right for the buyer, and it's right for the seller as well, because some sellers, they may be ready to sail off in the sunset and some may not, and everything in between, right?
Right. Yeah.
In so many different scenarios, I think it really requires that person who's going to take the time, who's got the competence to really understand, the competence, the care, the interest, the desire to help them, and really end with a transaction, a deal that is amicable for all involved.
Yeah. Yeah. So the benefit is, so I guess the first thing I think is important to note is selling a business and buying a business is a highly emotional transaction. Highly emotional.
Mm,
And you would think it's a very practical choice, like you're looking at the numbers and you're saying, "Oh, this works for me." There's a ton more going on than just the numbers, and a
mm,
ton more things that matter than just the numbers. So it's a highly emotional um, uh, task to take on to both sell or buy. So that's where having a business broker is a huge benefit, because my job is to understand both the buyer and the seller, understand their motivations and their specific needs, and find a way to construct a deal that will benefit all parties. And not everybody gets everything they want all the time. That's not how it works, right? That's not how life works. But we can usually get to a really good place where everybody feels good and everybody, is happy to move forward. And having someone in the middle that is managing the communication without the emotional component is really, really beneficial. And I've seen deals go south often because of not having that liaison in between, just for some clear, clean, non-emotional communication back and forth.
mm.
Um, that that can be a hindrance to buyers and sellers that are not using a broker.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. This is so good. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for sharing your insights. I could hear the energy and the passion that you bring to the table for sellers and buyers. If someone listening, people want to reach out to you, they want to, what's the best way for them to do that? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
So through CPA Marketing Genius, we can be contacted through the website. And I think, Celine, maybe we can add the URL to the landing page. Um,
Sure thing.
yeah,
In the show notes.
in the show notes, and that way you can schedule some time to talk to us. So I mean, there's no cost to have that initial consultation. So if you've ever considered buying or selling a CPA firm, and are curious and have questions, I would highly encourage that you take advantage of that consultation time that we'd be willing to offer you, just to have that conversation.
Yeah, for sure. That's us. Yeah, so good. Awesome. Great. We'll do that. Thanks, Rebecca. Appreciate it.
No, thank you, Celine, for having me.
Thanks, everyone, for listening in. See you next time.